We've been taking the book of Romans little by little, and we're already in chapter 7, which is amazing, isn't it? I mean, it's only November. I'm excited. We're in chapter 7. We are dealing with why we have trouble giving up the law. Paul is talking to a group of people he's never ministered to before, but he's dealing with some things that he needs to deal with before he even gets out there to meet them. Some things that they've heard about his message. And we've noticed that it keeps coming back to the fact that they have trouble giving up the law. And Paul is trying very hard to convince them that living by the Spirit is different than living by the law. And we saw that last week in chapter 7. We talked about the new way of the Spirit. We're going to pick that up. By the way, I need to express my appreciation to everybody last week who was encouraging enough to listen to the radio program that we got through last week. Ken helped me get through that. Some of you made phone calls. Some of you sat in your cars to get it. My understanding is it doesn't come in very well in the house, and so you had to go out in your cars, and I really appreciate that. We'll be back at 3 o'clock today. We have a new sponsor, which is very exciting. Steve and his the mattress factory, that's our new sponsor. We're very excited about that. If you know of anybody else that would like to sponsor the program, we'd be very excited about that too. Romans chapter 7. We're going to start in verse 7. What shall we say then? Is the law sin? Far from it. Indeed, oh, by the way, we noticed this morning in the Sunday school that Paul does a lot of this. He anticipates some arguments that somebody's going to give him about his views on the law. And he anticipates somebody saying something pointed like, oh, Paul's saying the law is sin. He said, no, that's not what I'm saying at all. And it's easy sometimes to misunderstand what an author is trying to say. Sometimes it's easy to misunderstand what a preacher is trying to say in a sermon. I heard Gary say this. This is what he meant by that. Well, maybe not. Maybe you need to check with me and say, I heard you say this. Is that really what you said? And now we have YouTube and we can actually verify what I did actually say. What shall we say then? Is the law sin? Far from it. Indeed, I would not have known what sin was except through the law. For I would have not known what it is to covet if the law had not said, do not covet. But sin, seizing the opportunity afforded by the command, produced in me every kind of covetous desire. For apart from the law, sin is dead. Once I was alive apart from the law, but when the commandment came, sin sprang to life and I died. I found that the very commandment that was intended to bring life actually brought death. For sin, seizing the opportunity afforded by the commandment, deceived me, and through the commandment put me to death. So then, the law is holy, and the commandment is holy, righteous, and good. This seems like a really interesting argument to us in our world and our worldview. Paul said, you know, it's not that the law is sin, and we're talking about the law of Moses. We're talking not just the top 10, right? We're talking about the entire law of Moses. He said, it taught me to sin. What? Well, when it said don't covet, it said all of a sudden I couldn't help but covet everything. Now this could be a real simple thing. Like if I say to you, don't think about a pink elephant. What's the first thing you do? You think about a pink elephant so you don't think about it, right? Maybe you put one of those big circles with a cross through it, right? Don't think about it. But it brought to mind this idea of, well, there's a pink elephant I'm not supposed to think about. Covetousness. To desire what somebody else has and not want them to have it. Wanting instead of, for you to have it. He said, I didn't even think about that until they said, don't covet. And I see, what am I not supposed to covet? Well, I'm not supposed to covet that guy's nice car. That is a nice car. Wow, how come he's got it and I don't? You see how that works? Okay. Paul said the whole purpose of the law was to show us how much like God, we are not. But does that make the law bad? It says here, in verse 13, because somebody's going to say, hey, well then, are you saying the law is bad? No. Did that which is good then become death to me? By no means. But in order that sin might be recognized as sin, it produced death in me to that which is good, so that through the command, sin might become utterly sinful. What Paul is going to get at is that we have a sinful nature. And the problem is not the law. The law taught us how much of a sinful nature we have. Does that make the law bad? No, that doesn't make the law bad. That's not what he's saying. He's saying we have a problem. Very, very specifically saying I have a problem. Now, this is important because today he's going to tell us what the problem really is. And it's easy to read this text and miss what Paul is saying the problem is. Let's keep reading. He says, we know that the law is spiritual, but I am unspiritual, sold as a slave to sin. Today in the radio program, we're going to be trying to define what spirituality really is. It's amazing. I mean, we can be brought up in churches, we can live in Christendom for a long time and not be able to tell somebody, this is what it means to be spiritual. He said the law is spiritual. I'm not. He goes on, he says, I do not know what I am doing. For what I want to do, I do not do. But what I hate, I do. But what I hate, I do. This is really hard to read in English. Can you imagine what it was like to translate out of Greek? Let's start again. I do not know what I am doing. For what I want to do, I do not do. But what I hate, I do. And if I do not do what I want to do, I agree that the law is good. As it is no longer I myself who do it, but it is sin living in me. I know that nothing good lives in me, that is, in my sinful nature. For I have the desire to do what is good, but I cannot carry it out. For what I do is not the good I want to do. No, the evil I do not want to do, this I keep on doing. And if I do not do what I want to do, it is no longer I who do it, but the sin living in me who does it. Did you get that? Let's read it again. Let's read it backwards. Yeah. Okay. It does that me in living sin. All right. Paul's saying, listen, I have a problem. I have a sinful nature. I want to do good, but that's not what I do. I don't want to sin, but that's what I end up doing. I have got a problem. I have a problem. Maybe you've never faced up to that problem in your life. Maybe in your mind you always do good. Maybe you've never come to realize that there's things you think that are good that you don't do. And things that you don't think you ought to do that you do. Paul has faced that problem in his life. He said, I am not spiritual. There is nothing good that lives in my sinful nature. Nothing. Nothing. You can give me every law there is. You can make variations. You can tell me in every which way. But guess what I'm going to do? I'm not going to live up to it. The things that I think are good, I'm not going to end up doing it. Things that I think are bad, I'm going to end up doing those. So I find this law at work. When I want to do good, evil is right there with me. For in my inner being, I delight in God's law. But I see another law at work in the members of my body, waging war against the law of my mind and making me prisoner of the law of sin at work within my members. What a wretched man I am. Who will rescue me from this body of death? Thanks be to God, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Did you get it? Did you get the reference to your body in there? Did you see it? It's in there 3 times. Who's going to rescue me from this body